I'm agreeing with your statement that every season of Dragon Ball Z is Goku learning to Kamehameha in a different way.
Alright, for my first action, I'd like to talk about World Anvil. World Anvil lets you go from massive binders of notes to a nice cohesive online platform where you can organize all your information into one simple, easy, manageable system. You can keep track of NPCs, where my fourth action went, player backstories, and so much more. For my second action, I'd like to use the showing off action, where I can tell you that you can upload custom NPC stat blocks directly to your campaign. And all it takes is just one search and you can find any NPC that you have curtailed to your world. Makes finding that tavern keeper a little faster. For my last action, I want to tell everyone that World Anvil is an amazing product for amazing GMs, so check it out. Hey GM, what does multiple attack penalty mean?
So, we've been in comic books and cartoons and things and reaction randies, so they're all a little zany. I did want to make sure that we had something that was a little more classic high fantasy in the mix for those of us who maybe want to bring it down a notch or two. And so my second character was Garnath the Unbreaking, a steelskin hobgoblin, gladiator background, fighter class, right? And so Garnath uses a couple pieces of equipment that we brought in Treasure Bolt. For his armor, he has a massive heavy suit of Oyoroi armor that we brought forward because I thought that would be great. It's heavy composite armor. It's got bulwark on it. And so Garnath has no dexterity. I did not put a single ability bump into dexterity at any level of the build. He starts with a 10 at 1, he ends with a 10 at 20. But we do pump his strength up, so he finishes with a 24. We keep on top of his constitution. He gets a little bit of int out of the gate from his ancestry, and I didn't bother putting any more into that, so that starts at 12, finishes at 12. His wisdom I actually built up at every level so that we could finish with that 18 wisdom and then a 20 charisma by the time all is said and done as well, because, as his kind of, he uses a tower shield and a one-handed spear called a breaching pike, which is a one-handed reach spear and is a hobgoblin weapon. And so I figured the best way to kind of complement that was with some, good demoralize abilities and stuff. So that breaching pike, one-handed reach, it's got raising, is a new trait that we introduce in Treasure Vault. And what raising does is if you would damage an object, and so this includes shields, this includes, your siege engines and your vehicles and stuff like that, it deals additional damage, 2 additional points of damage per weapon damage die. So if somebody shield blocks and you're a hobgoblin with a breaching pike, you're going to punch big holes in their shield. And so to complement that, one of the weapon runes that I keep on top of that pike as I go along is corrosive and then into greater corrosive. Because if somebody else is using a shield, I want to take it away from them, and I want to take it away from them fast. So he's got the breaching pike and the tower shield as his main weapons. Through his hobgoblin abilities on his ancestry feats, hobgoblin weapon familiarity, just, get the access out of the way, make sure he's got all these fun tools available. Agonizing rebuke to build up on the demoralizing that he's doing, add some mental damage to that. And then squad tactics, war conditioning, and rallying cry, because he's a gladiator and he knows how to fight in the center of a team, right? For his feats, he actually has a little bit of overlap with Reaction Randy here. He's not quite as shield focused because he's really more about kind of being the center of the fight, taking that damage and having a lot of ways to kind of poke at people and put that tower shield to use. So he's got reactive shield into aggressive block and then powerful shove building on that. His fighter weapon mastery goes to the spear because that is going to be his main way of dealing damage, but then reflexive shield to keep that thing going, quick shield block. The point is, whatever I'm doing with my core 3 actions, I always want him to be able to get that tower shield up and involved, because that's, I mean, that's so much AC. He's got the opportunity if he needs to burn actions to even take cover there with that. So I really, you don't waste a tower shield, right? If you're going to use a tower shield, you make sure that you're using the tower shield as much as possible. Certain strike, just so he's kind of, staying on top of always hitting with that breaching pike, always dealing a little bit of damage. Flinging shove, when he blocks with that shield, he wants to throw people around. We want to like really kind of keep on top of that. Every time he shield blocks, I just want to get as much out. It's kind of the opposite. Like Reaction Randy was trying to get as many different things that he could do with his reactions. This is more like, I'm only going to do the one reaction, but I'm going to load as much on top of it as I can. Whirlwind Strike. So again, he's got a reach weapon, and if you've got a reach weapon, Whirlwind Strike is really hard to say no to, because it's hit everything you can reach and don't apply map until after you're done, right? Like that's improved reflexive shield, savage critical, and then boundless reprisals at 20. So then he can play with reactions as much as he wants. Now he's got, as many reactions to play with his shield blocks and his attack of opportunity as the fight's going to present to him with, and that's just really good. For the skill feats, we went with some things, grabbed Hefty Hauler, just because that heavy armor, a tower shield, and a bulky spear, right? He's right out of the gate, he's coming in carrying a lot of stuff, and he needs a little extra oomph to make sure that he can juggle all that and still have room to carry, a backpack full of consumables and adventuring supplies and things like that. Titan Wrestler, because if he's going to shove people, he may as well be able to shove as many people as possible, no matter how big they are. Terrifying Resistance, since I'm going to be trying to use that third action to demoralize as much as possible. Battle Cry, because like I mentioned, our guy is a squad leader and a gladiator. He wants to make sure that everybody's getting a little bit of it. Terrified Retreat, so if he like really successfully demoralizes somebody, they also run away from him, which is just good stuff. Intimidating Prowess, get a little extra oomph out of the fact that he's a beefcake, and have his strength provide some benefits to his intimidations. Group Coercion, so that in social settings he can coerce using his intimidation against as many people as possible. And then his last 3 skill feats were Wall Jump, Cloud Jump, and Powerful Leap, and that was just because I'd already leaned so hard into having so many good intimidation feats, and I even used general feats to grab things like Intimidating Glare and Scare to Death. So at that point, it was just, let's add a little bit of mobility on here. Let's make sure that if Garnath finds himself in a situation where he needs to tactically reposition, he's got some options for doing that. And yeah, that's kind of the core. That's kind of the core of the build there. His backup weapon is another Hobgoblin weapon, so I should probably mention that as well, since that's going to be the last spoiler I've got for the night. And that is the Phalanx Piercer, and this is just a big freaking Hobgoblin bow. Let me read the description for you here. This massive bow is made from bone or wood, reinforced with flexible metal strips. Designed by Hobgoblin engineers to take down shielded opponents, the Phalanx Piercer fires heavy iron shod bolts. And so the Phalanx Piercer itself, the traits on this are concussive, which is normally a firearm trait, right? It means these big, heavy arrow bolts, they have so much weight and force behind them that even if you're resistant to piercing damage, it's still going to hit you with the full force bludgeoning. And then it's a Hobgoblin weapon, obviously. It's got propulsive, so you get to add a little bit of your strength bonus to it. Since Garnath is such a beefcake, we want to do that. Since he has no dex, he's also really going to want to get as much out of the one shot he's going to try with this thing around if he's reduced to using it. It's got that raising trait that I mentioned earlier, where it does extra damage to shields and objects and stuff like that. You'll see that comes up in a couple of these kind of tactically relevant weapons that we bring in Treasure Vault. And then because of the fact that it is unwieldy and it's got those big heavy bolts, it's got that volley 20 feet. So you may be going like, oh, volley, that's rough. It does do a D10 base damage though. So when it hits, it's going to hurt, and you'll find ways to deal with the fact that it's not as accurate at those close distances. So yeah, that is Garnath in all of his tanky glory. I should note here, Garnath has a 45 AC before raising his tower shield. With his tower shield up, and if he takes cover, that's 49, and there are no like outside buffs brought into play, right? He's got to purely by himself, just raising his shield and interposing it, he can hit 49 AC at his top level there.
So good. That's so good. Now, raising a shield is a circumstance bonus, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. So,
because it's the same as the take cover, because that's what you do to bring it up to that +4 is you take cover behind it.
Yeah, I don't know of any good ways to add status bonus to that off the top of my head. I don't know, James. Do you know any?
Inspired defense from Bard.
Oh. All right, there you go. So, I'm curious if we could hit. Where were you at? Where you said at 49? Have we hit 50?
I mean, that would get us to 50 right 50. There. If there's a bard in the group, that'll pop you up there. But I know there's a couple other status bonuses. Status almost always means it's a spell. You dig around. I'm sure cleric's got some good party stuff that'll kick into play, and I have a strong suspicion we could probably get it up to 54 without trying too hard if we had the right group in play and we found the right things to drop into place there.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this is we can get the high end. This build isn't even centered around the AC. It's just kind of a byproduct of everything else that the build does, and I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, and the demoralizes that he's dropping are reducing the enemy's attack as well.
Yes.
Right. So
which is just as good.
Which is just as good as raising your AC. Yes. In some ways better, because they also can't hit your allies whose AC is probably not as high.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about, I know we keep coming back to this, but it's about that teamwork and stacking on these buffs and these debuffs as much as we can. Yeah, for sure. James, any other thoughts? Sorry, I feel like I interrupted you there.
No, I'm just more excited to hear more Hobgoblin support.
I know.
Hobgoblins in 2nd edition, I've noticed, was a lot like the Team Fortress 2 lineup of where it's very like all about military, like it's all about what role you are going to serve, and like narratively wise, I know it's the community, but like thinking about it in a little bit more of a broader sense, it's very much like a militaristic structure to it, and I'm loving the concussive on a bow. I'm very excited. If I wasn't already hyped for Treasure Vault with all the great stuff that was announced at PaizoCon, I'm very excited to see more ancestry weapon support, really getting the use out of that weapon familiarity feat.
I mean, since it has a concussive trait, that means I can reflavor it as a dynamite on my bow, right? All right, it's just flavor.
Yeah. If you're playing with the Looney Tune, then like definitely, right?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, if I could have the Looney Tune gain like 20 more levels, you have no idea the weirdness.
Just casual 20 more.
If I was going to do free archetype, if I was playing Garnath in a free archetype game, again, Garnath is supposed to be kind of high fantasy. I was trying to make him a character that would feel really good in any game, even if your inspirations are more Tolkien oriented, as you mentioned earlier. And so I would probably Bastion and Sentinel, right? I've got a big shield. I'm wearing heavy armor. So I would just lean into the archetypes that let me squeeze even more out of those.
Yeah. Michael, I'm glad you did a nice serious character to complement, the more silly ones we've been doing. I also did a serious character wherein I fit 10 archetypes into one character, just like everyone was asking for, right? This build is very straightforward, but I call it 10 Archetype Amy, parentheses, who also speaks 57 languages. This one was brought to us by another member of the DD8 team who will be known by, who goes by September. And I'm excited about this one. It's pretty straightforward, and I won't go into all the details because you'll kind of see where it's going. But we're gonna start off as an umbral gnome, so that I can take the gnome polyglot feat at first level. Now, this is going to be important for the language aspect of it. Every time I take multilingual feat, normally multilingual gives you 2 languages you learn, but the gnome polyglot gives me a 3rd for every multilingual I take. So now we're at 3. I'm going to start us off with the Rogues Racket Mastermind, because we're a rogue. We're going to have lots of skill trainings, and I'm going to be able to identify with the way that the Mastermind Racket works is if you successfully recall knowledge on a creature, they are flat-footed to you for that turn. So we'll have a lot of opportunity to do that as the rogue, but that's not a central piece of this build. It really starts to begin at level 2, where we take the Vigilante dedication. It's going to be our first. Immediately level 3 after that, I'm going to take multilingual, just so I have 3 more languages I know. Level 4, the Vigilante provides, and this is kind of central to the build, social purview, which lets me have access to a second social dedication. And for that, I'm going to take the linguist dedication, because I want to learn more languages. I need as many as humanly possible shoved in here. I'm going to take as my skill feat hidden magic, which is a vigilante feat, and also a central component of this, because the way this works is something to consider as you're building, dear listener, your characters. A lot of dedications, a lot of archetypes allow you to work your way through them. In order to make your way through an archetype, you have to take 2 additional feats within that archetype, and a lot provide you with feats that can be taken as skill feats. So this one, for example, I can take it and immediately check off 1 box from that previous archetype, the Vigilante, so that I'm down 1 and I can keep moving forward. At level 5, I'm going to take the multilingual cipher feat, which is a linguist feat, checks off 1 of those. And at level 6, I'm going to take the skill feat phonetic training to finish off linguist and be done with that, while also taking the archaeologist dedication. 7, I'm going to take scholastic identification, which is an archaeologist feat, check off that, and settlement scholastic. So by level 7, I'm all the way through my archaeologist dedication. 8, I'm going to take the dandy dedication and a dandy feat. 9, I'm going to take another dandy feat called fabricated connections. Level 10, I'm going to take the scrounger dedication and reverse engineering, which is a scrounger feat. 11, I'm going to take multilingual again, an expert disassembler, which is a scrounger feat. We're done with scrounger. I'm going to move on to level 12, take sentinel dedication and steel skin, which is a sentinel feat that I can take as well. At level 13, I'm going to take empathetic plea as my ancestry feat, as well as armor specialist. At level 14, I'm going to take my medic dedication and treat condition, which is a medic feat. At level 15, another multilingual, just because I need it, and holistic care, which is going to finish off my medic dedication. 16, I'm going to take the trick driver dedication with express driver. 17, I'm going to take power slide to finish off that trick driver dedication. 18, I'm going to take the cavalier dedication and another multilingual, because I need to speak more languages. And speaking of speaking more languages, I'm going to take it again at 19, along with again take multilingual as both my general and my skill feat, because I really need to work my way through these. Something that's important is at level 15, I became legendary in society. And when that happens, all of my multilinguals pick up an extra language. So you go from learning 2 languages to 3. And because of my gnome polyglot, all of these multilinguals are now giving me 4 languages. And finally, we're going to finish off with level 20, take my lion blade dedication and 1 more multilingual to round off those full 57 different languages I can speak and 10 different archetypes. Now, is this character going to mechanically function very great in this game? Shrug emoji. But are you going to have 10 different archetypes that all provide you with different aspects of the game and all kinds of different things you can do, no matter what kind of situation you're in the game? Your character is going to have something from his background that he can apply to the situation, and 10 Archetype Amy is made just for that. So that rounds it out. I'm sure you guys don't have too many crazy thoughts about it because it's a very straightforward idea, but I wanted to just show off that this can be done. You can fit 10 archetypes in one build. It's totally viable.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And working those skill feats is the way to do it. Those archetypes that let you buy in and buy out with skill feats, like that you can escalate really, really fast there in a way that, you know, can honestly be really satisfying. While you were talking, I was poking around trying to look at like the AC bonuses, because we talked about where could we get Garnath to.
Oh, yeah.
I said 54. I think it's actually going to be more like 53 is the top end, because his item and circumstance are maxed out, and I don't know if we actually have a way to get +4 on status anymore. I think we, for very good reasons, errated the only thing that was currently in the game that would give that, but it might be out there and I'm just not finding it. Archives of Nethys is running a little slow at the moment, and I wanted to pay attention to what you were saying, not wrestle with a website.
Well, you know, this is a great way to interact. If you're watching this right now and you know how to get that elusive +4 status bonus, leave a comment, let us know. I'm curious.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Well, that finishes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just gonna say, I did have I was talking to you guys about this before the show. I did have like a free archetype idea that has nothing to do with being multilingual and is solely about the fact that you have Trick Driver on there, and you frankly have like so much great stuff to do anyways. Like any free archetype on a build that's already rocking like 10 archetypes is just, you're just looking for stuff to fill the slots, right?
Oh yeah. Why not have 11 or 12 or 13?
And so I really liked the idea of Artillerist, because Artillerist allows you to operate siege engines with fewer people than would normally be required. And Trick Driver has some great stuff for, you know, driving around, getting hands-free and things like that. I was like, you know, it might be more of a thing where you have to change what you're using your actions for, and you might need like one other person to take full advantage of it. But slapping Artillerist on top of this and then picking a vehicle that's large enough for you to mount a cannon on it is like, why not? Right? Like, why wouldn't you go there if you had the option?
I love it. And then, you know, and this build is just going to let you address these situations as they arise, right? You find a car you can jump in, or whatever, you know, the equivalent is in your setting. Boom, you've got the means with which to make that badass. I like that. All right. And rounding us out here, James, let's do your last build. Tell us about it.
So if it wasn't abundantly clear that items are by far one of my favorite things in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the Alchemist class is the perfect thing. So I've created what I've lovingly called the Momma Bear. It is a human with a scout background who has the beastkin heritage. They're constantly in their bear form. We built the idea around the idea of having as many healing potions or elixirs of life as possible and get to throw treats out, but while still being a very good support. Now, the Alchemist class is perfect if you want to go for a pure support that doesn't require magic, because classes such as Cleric and Bard can do really good jobs with this, but the Alchemist class is where I think it really shines if you have system mastery. As someone who's been playing it since the playtest, I'm not afraid to just throw out as many items as I possibly can. And so I went with the cryogen for our research field. We are going to be using a lot of our infused reagents at the beginning of our day, actually, to create healing potions and lesser elixirs of life, while still having a few infused reagents left over in case I need to spontaneously create anything. But the idea of the build is taking as many of the class feats that give you more and more if you plan like that far ahead. And so I believe it's efficient alchemy at 4th level that's going to let me get even more items upon my daily preparations when I do this. And then combining that with using like combined elixirs, getting my perpetual breedeth, which would give me even more items. So by the time I think level 20 is coming around, I think one batch of infused reagents could potentially create up to 15, if not more, healing potions. Like, even if it's level 1 healing potions, out of combat, that can get a party up to full. And there are ways to get infinite supplies, because there are alchemist class features that negate the need to expend a infused reagent to get it done.
think it's
So
perpetual infusions.
yeah, perpetual
Yeah.
infusions is gonna give me that first level healing potion that's gonna just like I can create near infinite supply. So if my party doesn't have a cleric, congrats, I'm that cleric. You might not get it in combat. Actually, I could give you in combat. I have quick alchemy. I could just whip up, whatever the highest level of elixir of life or healing potion I possibly need. But I also put a lot of points into intimidation, so I can, demoralize. Don't mess with Momma Bear or in her cubs, or else you're gonna really feel it. And that was kind of the idea that I had with this character. Very all around, very support, protect all of her cubs. And then yeah, I like support based characters. I'm not really one who's gonna go in and, as much as I love the barbarians, I can, really hit for a lot of damage. I think utility is a role that not a lot of people like playing, and I think Alchemist combines utility with support so perfectly, and I just think it's a great class.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
mean,
what Momma Bear did.
yeah, if I can be allowed to stand over Pathfinder 2e for a second, I will say that something cool about it is with the 3-action economy, it's a lot easier to play a support class, and in other games, sometimes when you're playing a support class, you're using you're using your actions every turn to just support your team. But with with the quick bomber especially, you can be supporting your team, use 2 out of your 3 actions to help out your team, give them something they need, give them a boost, and then boom, just make an attack, throw a
Oh
bomb
yeah,
out. And
I
being
have
able to,
healing bomb too, which
yeah,
means I can AoE heal
I
everyone. So
love
like
that.
I've essentially just replicated 3-action heal in the sense of like 1 action of a quick bomber plus a healing bomb.
Yeah, I think just having the ability to kind of address situations in a lot of different ways, especially when it comes to damage type, is one of the strengths of the alchemist. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, but you can something I think a lot of alchemists should consider is the fact that you're gonna be good at crafting. You can, especially at higher levels, start crafting lower level items like it's nothing, and make sure you've got a good supply of yourself. Of you have bombs that can do fire, lightning, sonic damage, and just have yourself a good cache. Because then when you later go into combat, especially if you're using recall knowledge on an enemy to try to figure out their weakness, maybe even let your DM know, I'm specifically using this recall knowledge to figure out what his weakness is. And GMs out there, maybe lower the DC of that check because it's a very specific check that they're trying to make. The alchemist can figure out an enemy's weakness and then just have a cache of bombs to target their weakness. And the implications for that can be huge. If an enemy has weakness 7, to an attack, and you can get out 3 attacks, and with alchemists they can deal splash damage. So even on a miss, you're dealing 1 cold damage to a enemy that's weak against cold. Now you're dealing 8 because all of the weaknesses quickly add up. And even if all 3 of those attacks miss, that's 24 damage you hit minimum on them. And I think that is one of the coolest strengths of the alchemists. In addition to, James, everything this build does helps support your team and keeps them alive, keep their HP up. Being able to juggle both of those things is one of the reasons that alchemists might have 2 less to hit than other classes. I know people complain about that a lot, but they've got all of these options available, and that's a trade-off within the mechanical game design of the character.
Well, and even beyond the splash damage, right? A lot of alchemist bombs deal persistent damage.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can drop persistent damage against an opponent with a weakness, then it's not just, they don't just take the weakness when the bomb hits them, they're also taking that additional damage from the weakness every time the persistent damage pops, right? So they can get, they're not going to have that one big, enormous, explosive hit that like the barbarian gets, but they can drop those dots, right? Those damage over time effects. And against the right enemy with a properly prepared alchemist who has, picked the right tools for the job, that can ramp up very quickly into a really impressive amount of damage that you've dropped out there. And damage isn't even the core point of the character, right? It's just a thing that you're doing while you're doing all of the other stuff.
Yeah, I imagine Alchemist is very much like Batman, where in the sense that if you're prepared for the encounter, it's gonna go very well in their favor. And if you wanted to make it more martial, one of the archetypes I was thinking about, I can't put it in Path Builder because it's not out yet, would be a thaumaturge alchemist if I really wanted to go in that direction, because then I can start giving enemies weaknesses to my bobs, or I could dip a little bit more into like a fighter or barbarian, and focus more on the mutagen aspect. So I love the alchemist because it has this one of the biggest flexibilities in the game of playing every role in one class. Something that I really admire in the champion, which is the alchemist can play the entire support side of the game and still do a little bit of the offense. Champion is the offense with a little bit of the spell casting and the support abilities.
I was going to take one moment to do my one rules lawyer thing. For people watching, I generally do not want to be a rules lawyer, especially when we're not having fun and talking about like builds and stuff, because the point of the game is to have fun. And I don't generally care if a rule is being flexed or bent somewhere, as long as everybody's having a good time and it's not upsetting for someone else at the table. But I was just going to note, alchemists make elixirs of life, not healing potions, just so somebody out there isn't like, wait, alchemists can make healing potions? It's a terminology thing. It's because alchemy is a different bucket than magic stuff. I could hear that one person watching going like, everything they talk about has just been invalidated because that's not what alchemists make. And I wanted to look at that one person and be like, look, I heard you. We get it. Here's the correction. Were
we saying healing? Were we saying healing potion that whole time?
Yeah.
I was using it more I was using more in shorthand of having like support based abilities, because like in the sense that when I said healing potion, I more meant like stuff like antidote, stuff like that can provide the support. I think healing potion is just a very colloquial term that most people will understand. For the one person who would rules lawyer me in this case, my game, my rules. So.
Well, there actually is some important distinctions, right? Because like undead, I think only can have elixir of life and not healing potions, or is it vice versa?
Yeah, they can't benefit from positive healing. Yeah. So and potion being magic has the positive trait and stuff like that. Yeah, I run into this all the time when I'm like talking to my coworkers, because we have to have very kind of rigid vocabularies when we're talking, because we make a game that uses keywords and stuff. And I am someone who will very casually throw out not the specific correct rules word, because I'm trying to get to the end of a sentence real quick and move on to the next thought. And then I'll see the look coming back at me and I'm like, okay, give me a second. I'm gonna wind it back, and I'm going to be a little bit more intentional with my word choice here.
We have one of those in my group. I know absolutely what that's like. I get it, and it's important. Honestly, it's the reason that Pathfinder is structured so well. We have this language that sets everything in place. Well, I think that is going to James. Anything else for your build?
For my build specifically, no. I just really like playing alchemists. I'm very glad that they exist so well in this system.
Me too.
The other free archetype thought that I had for your build, you've already got so much cool stuff that you can just kind of whip out on the fly. I think you're a little soft in your options for reactions.
Yes,
and so the thing I was thinking was Talisman Dabbler, because that gives you more of the whipping out the items you need when you need them. You've got the quick affixtures, and quite a few talismans have reaction-based activations, so that gives you some more ability to kind of maximize your action economy on the build.
So not to get like super duper pedantic, if we were using free archetype here, I probably would have actually gone champion, because then I would have gotten to go would have gotten the champion's reaction, and I personally probably would have done paladin and then take the ranged reprisal feat, which that means I can then throw by bombs as the reaction, which would have a lot of fun narrative implications of, oh, you just hurt one of my cubs, chuck a alchemist fire at them, or
essentially. And you've got multiple vectors by which you could be triggering weaknesses. Like, God help them if they have multiple weaknesses. You're weak to good and fire. This is going to be a very bad day for you.
Alchemists can just take a buzzsaw to enemies sometimes when the stars align. Oh yeah, we played Age of Ashes with an alchemist, and a lot of enemies in Age of Ashes had weakness to cold, which like only our alchemist could deal. And they would just chew through enemies sometimes. It was pretty cool. Well, I think that's going to bring us to the close of our review of these builds. Thank you to everyone that's watching, that stuck around to hear our zany builds. Let me ask James and Michael, before we finish up, putting these builds together, did anything jump out to you, or as you find yourself building characters for this game, what kind of themes do you find yourself kind of circling back to? What jumps out at you?
So I think one of the ways that you kind of learn a game that is crunchier, like Pathfinder 2nd edition, where you've got a lot of options, is you kind of make a build and something in the build speaks to you, right? And so now you're a little more confident. So you want to go looking at like maybe a different class or a different ancestry, but there's that thing you learned that works really well. So you kind of grab it and then you use it as a launching point for the next build. And somewhere in that build, you find the next thing that really speaks to you. And so sometimes I find myself in some places I really didn't expect to go, but I can always kind of trace my way back to how I got there by looking at, you know, what have I been playing, or what have I been writing and working on, or whatever. And I think that's such a fun way to explore the game. I had a great time listening to you guys talk about your builds as well, because you know, it's kind of a joke around the office that if somebody's going to make a build that is going to cause somebody else to roll their eyes a little bit, it's probably me. We were running a Return of the Rune Lords game converted to Pathfinder 2nd edition, and I was playing a Leshy Luchador through that campaign, you know? And so like it did my heart good to see the cartoon build and 4 Reaction Randy. And 4 Reaction Randy, to be clear, is a very legit build. It's only funny because you called it 4 Reaction Randy. You could have named it something completely different and people would have been like, that's just an awesome build. That's so good. You know?
You gotta take the comedic swing with it when you get the chance, let me tell you.
I 100% agree. I think that's such a cool thing about the game too, is it's all about the eyes that you choose to look at the game through, right?
Absolutely.
I had a wrestler build once where I was describing it to an older friend who I game with, and I was describing it in the context of Zangief from Street Fighter, and he was like, oh, why you gotta bring video games and cartoons into the fantasy game? I don't like that and stuff. And I'm like, all right. I gave it like a month, and a month later, I talked to him about the build again, but this time, instead of talking about it as Zangief, I talked about it as Beowulf, and he's like, that's awesome!
Yeah. But I on your earlier point about how like one aspect of the build can grab you, something I'll mention is to anyone that's kind of maybe new to putting together builds, I cannot recommend enough, go on Archives of Nethys and search for keywords. You know, as I was doing mine, I searched faint and I found there's only 2 items in the entire game that have the word faint in them, which is nuts, but like you can search if you're looking for a bonus of something, let's say acrobatics, you're trying to bump that up, search item bonus acrobatics, and you'll get everything that'll give you a bonus. And working your way through that, so often I'll just be looking at random entries on Archives of Nethys and find something that I had zero intention of taking or building into, and that'll completely change the direction that I take the build. And that's one of my favorite parts of the game, is these kind of evolving characters as we build them. Mine certainly evolve as I put them together. They're almost never the character I set off to start making them by the end, but I'm always really happy with how they turn out.
Yeah, that chasing the traits and the keyword advice is so good, right? As you get into higher levels, most items will do a couple things. So if you find an item that makes you good at like shove and tumble through for some reason, right? And you've already been building through tumble through. Well, now you click on shove and you're like, well, all right, what else interacts with this? How else can I bring that in there? Or if you're trying to build a pyromancer, you can literally just go to like the very first fire spell, produce flame, click on that, you know, little fire keyword up there in the traits line, and it will show you down in that list every other spell, item, etc. that has the fire trait. And so it can be a really cool way to make a game that seems really big and intimidating suddenly go really fast and get you to that point where you go from I'm not sure like what to build to, man, I'm gonna have to build 3 characters just to get all of the ideas I got from following these traits down.
Yeah, and it's totally legitimate to have that kind of decision paralysis when you first get started, because there is so much. There are whole books I haven't made my way through reading yet, and so much more that I've yet to discover. But often what I found is the best thing you can do is just try things out. And don't, if you're playing a game and you have the money, just buy a couple things as you're working your way through and try them out, see if you find them enjoyable, and pick something and go with it. And that's going to be the best way to just get a broad experience. And you'll have plenty of time. If you're going to spend any amount of time with Pathfinder 2, you're going to have the chance to try a lot of new items and skills and feats out. And don't be afraid to retrain. We keep saying this, but it's so important. I constantly retrain my characters. Now it's going to vary depending on your game and on your GM, but if you take a feat, you hate it, trade it out. Or even if you really enjoy a feat, but there's another feat at that same level that you want to see how you like it, A/B them, try them both out if your GM will let you retrain, and then go with, whatever one you like better as you're playing. There's plenty of opportunities for you to try out many things in Pathfinder instead of kind of being locked in like you might in other systems.
Yeah, I try to be so generous with retraining because the thing that's important for me is that everybody enjoys their character at the table. And if somebody is asking to retrain, then it's probably because whatever they're doing is something they're not having fun with. And it doesn't make any sense to me to be like, no, you have to keep playing the thing you're not enjoying. You're like why? We're all here to have fun, man. And if trying something else out is what's fun for you, do it. And if you aren't sure how to build your character, even what an idea is, flip open the book, pick the first class, make a first level character. It's actively pretty hard to make a bad character in PF2, and then trial and error. It'll work or it won't for you. And once you know what works for you and what doesn't, you follow the trail,
Yeah, and don't put yourself down if something doesn't work out like you want it to. You might make a whole build that functions on this one idea, and then you do it a couple times, like, oh, actually, I got my thrills with that. I'm going to try something else out. Don't be afraid to do that. It's always an option.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a better way of framing it is because a lot of people view Pathfinder as very the D&D, Legolas is very much of the I have a bow. That's my whole shtick, is I have a bow. I viewed this game a little bit more like how Lancer frames their mechs, where it's very much a drop-in system of where at the next level up, for instance, I could build a whole new mech. I could take new license levels and stuff. I know this is not Pathfinder specifically, but it's a broader point of TTRPG play is, as someone who uses a lot of third-party stuff and writes a lot of third-party stuff, I have so many options that I want to constantly play with. And if it feels right for the character, I'm going to retrain when we hit that level up of getting to try out either a new class that fits well within the theme or the narrative structure, or try out new class feats. I just retrained out of 2 or 3 of my class feats when I got a running reload on my gunslinger, because I was like, oh, I don't need defensive armaments anymore. I don't need to fill up a third action roll of needing a defense. I could just run away, reload my gun, and get another shot off. That was the whole concept for the character, was being a mobility based sniper. And so I love that mindset, getting to play back and forth with, oh, I'm not making a new character. No, this is just a new frame to put them under. So I think this is very much a someone who's going to university to study more than one thing at a time. Sure, my main thing is being a champion, but I also have a minor in gunslinger, or I have 4 minors in between unexpected sharpshooter, sniping duo, trick driver, and alchemy. Just because I can. I think that's what Pathfinder does a really, really great job at, where I can't intentionally make this character wrong. I'm just gonna have a lot of options in combat, but I've played 2E long enough to go, oh, this is what I want to do. Here, boom, my turn's over.
Translating what you mentioned about in Lancer to being able to kind of rebuild yourself, an approach that I found works really well for me, at least, is to consider the different things you might need for combat. So does your character, we mentioned this earlier, do you have a reaction? Do you have a way to attack? Do you have a way to defend? Do you have a way to get away? If you cover all those 4 bases with your character as a whole, you're going to make a more well-developed character that'll perform better and probably be more enjoyable for you in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Find your bliss, man. We're playing a game like this, right? We're here to have fun. I love characters that grow organically, right? and a character who says, you know what, like power attack doesn't make sense for me anymore, so I'm going to retrain it for this other feat because the thing my guy wants to do now is this. Like, that's normal, right? That's how it works. If you use the same tactic at 7th level that you were using at 2nd level, did your character really grow? You know, and maybe your character doesn't need to grow. I read the Dragon Ball Super manga, and there was this really hilarious scene where like Piccolo and Goku are watching Vegeta fight, and Piccolo and Goku are like, it's crazy how much Vegeta's grown. Yeah, it really is. And then Goku's like, what about me? And Piccolo's like, you don't need to change. You're fine.
I know the exact moment you're talking about too, because I'm like thinking about Goku. Like Goku from I've read and / watched the like original Dragon Ball where he's just like a kid. He as soon as he learns Kamehameha, like that's his character. There's no character. I mean, there's a narrative character arc where he like dies for a bit, but he's still like Kamehameha blasting his way through death. Like I'm a very straightforward build.
I'm agreeing with your statement that every season of Dragon Ball Z is Goku learning to Kamehameha in a different way.
Exactly. It's Super Saiyan 1 that he Kamehamehas into Spirit Bomb, and then he Kamehameha into Super Saiyan 2. And then now we're at the point where he's like Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan whatever 3, you know, like I don't know, I haven't seen the most recent Dragon Ball, but still my point being he's found a new ways to just replicate the same effect, which is probably a person at the table going, I have this niche. I want to do this niche in 6 different ways. And I think Tui goes, oh, you want to do that? Great. Here's a entire feat tree dedicated to Kamehameha blasting, whether it be like a Ray of Frost reflavor or just taking the Key Monk feat of just literally Super Saiyan up. There's no other way to describe that feat. It is quite literally someone looked at Dragon Ball or JoJo was like,
wait, are you talking about Key Form?
Sorry, Key Form. It's it's 11:30. Okay.
I wrote Key Form, and I was I was watching Yu Yu Hakusho at the time, like while I was working on monk feats for the Advanced Player's Guide. And it was this scene where Bui like flexes off his armor and he's floating up in the air in like the aura of Phoenix fire. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. We go and do that. And then Mark Seifter was the designer developing my text, and Mark just leaned even harder into the super, like there's a thing where it's like your hair changes color to match your aura.
Color. Wind blows everywhere, and then you have like an aura surrounding around you. I'm like, this is anime. It's just I've seen Death Note scenes, and that guy doesn't even power up. He just has a book, and it's so much similar to that very moment.
Yeah. The aura was me, but the hair changing color was Mark.
Wow, Mark. That's my favorite fact that I learned today, right? Let me tell you. All right. Well, on that note, I think we should wrap up. Michael, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. Everyone who stuck around to watch the full duration of this video, thank you so much. If you have any thoughts on our builds, tell us where we messed up. I'm sure we messed up plenty of places. Tell us any better optimizations you have or your thoughts. Leave a comment below. Subscribe if you haven't. Tell a friend. My name's Eli. I'm the editor of DD8.
I'm James. I am a person who's often on this channel. I don't even know what my official title is anymore.
And Michael Sayre, senior designer for Paizo. Happy to be here once again. This was awesome, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it having you. And everyone have a great rest of your night. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.